I'll start. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Hi Jason, Jamie, Daniel, Connor, Sadia. How are you all today? Make sure to have the chat open at all times as well so that we can see the messages coming in. I see that's Tyler popping in now as well. Just in time, Tyler.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So sorry I'm late. Traffic was getting worse and worse on my way home. Is everybody ready?
Yep,
Wonderful.
all good.
Sitting in, waiting to attend. Yeah, we've got a few people here. Wonderful. Okay. Um, Ash, are you taking a lead on just introductions to the network before handing over to our speakers?
Yeah, no problem. So welcome everyone. Good evening. This is our what's this second webinar now under the REACH network. So continuing on from our kind of theme of bringing in different highlights for the different cultures that we've got present within engineering. We're trying to highlight just the different themes to kind of surrounding different ethnic backgrounds. So the last webinar that we've done was for South Asian Heritage Month, and this one is for Black History Month. We're very excited to also announce our two guest speakers. We've got Chi and Izzy here, so I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. A little bit about the REACH network as well. We started off back in December last year and just trying to actually piece together a network full of like-minded individuals that could follow you through your engineering career. Whether you're starting off as a graduate or even a student, all the way up until the manager of your company. We wanted to make sure that a network could follow you throughout that. And it's been going very great. We've had a lot of kind of, I guess, cooperation and events that we want to put through virtually, keep them free for everybody. And this is one of those, so we hope you guys enjoy. And I think I will now pass it over to Izzy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Izzy Okasun. I'm the Business Transformation Manager at BOC Gases, a member of the Linda Group. I always tell people I wear two hats in BOC. My second hat is as a Employee Resource Group Lead for the Racial Diversity Group. I also wear many other hats outside, but I'll just leave that for now. But in terms of my day job, my job really is just ensuring, we continually improve the operational efficiency through the use of digital tools, and for the ARG aspect, it's just making sure I tie in our corporate strategy with social impacts and making sure our members and our business understands what it means to be really diverse, and our members also feel like they feel comfortable to be their true selves at work. So that is really, my key job, making sure I come into work making sure our members are happy and feel comfortable, but also my business, our business is profitable as a business overall. So that's me in a quick nutshell.
Thank you, Izzy. And Chi, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yep. Nice to meet you, Izzy.
Okay.
So I'm an offshore structural engineer and project manager. And I design and manage the integrity of offshore platforms and oil rigs and anything that's steel on water. Done that for around 6, 7 years now, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But I'm also head of graduate recruitment at Kent, which means that I head the technical review process for the London, Epsom, and Bristol teams. And I'm also an EDI ambassador for the London team, which means that I spend a lot of my time speaking on diversity and managing other champions across the business to ensure that our people feel they're safe and included in most spaces. Outside of work, I'm also the chair of the Innovate Group, which is a parliamentary group essentially created by the ECITB. And basically, myself and 14 other engineers that work in disciplines within oil and gas across energy spaces come together and do everything we can to retain and attract engineers from diverse backgrounds. And I've been chair for 2 years now and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you guys for that. Tyler, I guess we can do a kind of small thing for us as well for anyone else that's just kind of maybe had their first interaction with REACH. We've also got Poggy here from InterEngineering as well. So I guess before our introductions, Poggy, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. My name is Poggy Murray-Witham. I'm one of the co-chairs for InterEngineering, which is the LGBTQIA+ network for Econ Engineers. I'm also program manager for Econ Engineers, and so I manage the skills bootcamps, training programs that we do, the business development side, and also the research side of the business, as well as the networks. There are 7 different networks that we have.
Very busy.
Yeah, I wear many hats.
Yeah.
And that's what we love you for, Poggy. Thank you for that. And Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, of course. So I'm one of the co-chairs of REACH Network. I've been involved with the network since we began, officially launched earlier this year, but been in the background for a while. First involved with Equal Engineers back when I was at university. So it really shows the benefit of an organisation like this. Ash is similar. It's supported us right from university into our careers in different roles. And having that umbrella for however you identify or whatever your interests, you can find somewhere under Equal Engineers. So yeah, I also work at BOC, which is why the wonderful Izzy is with us today. I'm a project engineer in the day-to-day, and I also work internally in our race network as well, working with Izzy. Yeah, so thank you. I'll hand over to Ash, but I just want to say some incredible people, incredible guests. We've got Poggy and Ash, great people today, and I yeah, can't wait to see what's going to come out of our conversations.
Great. Perfect. Thank you for that, Tyler. And just to mention to everybody that the recording will be available for after the stream as well, so you are able to rewatch it if there is things that you pick up that you maybe want to look back on and share with your friends. So make sure to do that. I think right now we can jump straight into the questions for our speakers, with the first one being the theme of Black History Month this year is reclaiming narratives. And what does that mean to you? As if you'd like to start again.
Yeah, that's fine. So for me, reclaiming narratives is giving, us in the Black community, that agency to be able to share our stories from our own, lived experience. More of the stories about, our stories having told from different people's lenses. But reclaiming narrative for me is just saying, okay, as a person, as a mother, as a Black woman working in, in this industry, or as a person now, what does Black history mean to me? What does history mean to me, right? and me telling that myself the way I see it, the way I have lived it, or the way I have seen it being lived by people around me, and giving the permission to do that, you know, in all of its richness, right? But also telling those stories, not only to be able to celebrate the stories, but also to inspire those coming behind us, because we're doing all of this stuff not just for ourselves, you know, like she rightly said, all of the lovely stuff she's doing is to make sure we're attracting the right diverse talent and also retaining and nurturing them. But by telling these stories and creating the narratives, you are telling them what it really looks like. How, you know, how was the war fought? What did we do? What was our part in the war, right? But it's all taking that ownership and giving us the permission to be able to say, this is how it is, this is how it was, and this is how it needs to be in the future. Inspiring, celebrating, so giving us that ownership and permission to do that. That's what it really means to me.
That's great. That's great. And she, how do you feel about this as well?
What Izzy says resonates with me entirely. So when I think about reclaiming narratives, I think about untold stories. And when I think about, you know, our race, our community, I do believe that there's so many untold stories, stories that haven't been told throughout history, stereotypes that have been created and need to be challenged. And that's why I do what I do, because I want to tell stories. I want people to see things from our lens. I want people to understand the different microaggressions faced, but I also want people to be encouraged that there's so many of us that have come before us that have done incredible things who've been hidden in history. So I'm
Yeah.
here to share that history and share the richness of our history. I have fantastic parents who always made sure that I understood my heritage, and told me I come from kings
Yeah.
from the get-go,
Every day.
every single day, and made me aware of the fact that yes, you know, our community are very strong and we've been through plight, but it's also very important for us to understand that these stereotypes and these stories cannot be simplified any longer, right? They can't be gaslit any longer. They can't be unrecognized any longer. We need to show people that about our contributions to society and why we're valuable to society, we're valuable to our teams, we're valuable to our communities. And that's what I think Untold Stories does. It encourages the next generation to see how mighty they can be, how they can reclaim their own stories and live them and have these lived experiences and encourage the next few engineers or anyone else that wants to go into STEM and see that there are people that have done it before them and there are people that will come after us as well.
Yeah. Sorry, Chima, just to say what you said, just to kind of highlight what you said about parents, you know, reinforcing that, you know, it's very true. And it's just about the roles we all play, you know, in inspiring that next generation. Sometimes we take it for granted, the things we do, because people are watching, you know. Yeah, we're that good example, you know. So we might not be parents, or you might be parents or whatever. But again, you are that advocate in whatever space you hold or whatever position you hold. So we need to remember that and recognize that, make sure in whatever we do, we model that as well. Because like you said, people behind us are coming and they want to see that, you know. I remember I was in an event at work one time and someone gave me a hug, like, Izzy, thank you for pulling this event together. And in that moment, you know, it really sank in, because most times we're in that go flight mode. We know the impacts we're making, but we don't really let it sit in and resonate in terms of the impact and the effort you're putting in there. So that's really true.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that seeing more of us just allows this like assumptions to be distilled. It's
Yeah.
very important for them to see that we have invaluable fruit, you know, with
Yes.
everything that we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
and
It's
and
not a
I
tick box exercise.
and exactly that. And I think that's why I'm always very, I always start with whenever someone, you know, if I sense that someone's trying to hire me to do something because I'm black or in this, I always start with what are my fruits? What contribution can you see that I've made? And
Yeah.
yes, it's a +1 that I'm black, but
Yeah.
it should
Yeah.
be what contributions can I
Do you
make that
see?
make our
Yeah.
teams more dynamic to address the challenges we're
Yeah.
facing as a community?
Yeah.
Like it should be my technical competencies and the competencies
First.
I've earned
Yeah.
first that
Yeah.
really matter.
Yeah.
And the thing is, just coming from a different community and being neurodivergent enables me as well, I think, to be a better champion. It enables me to see, innovative lenses that other on a call might not
Yeah,
realize in the
yeah,
design
yeah,
world that I
yeah,
sit in.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's important to create safe spaces and make people feel like, oh my gosh, there's someone that looks like me.
yeah,
Engineers can look like me. It's actually
yeah,
possible. It's
yeah.
feasible. I feel like I've been challenged up to this point throughout my career where people might ask me, oh, you're an engineer? Maybe you're admin, or maybe
I
you
know.
look like you should be in law. I'm just like, no, actually, I'm a lead on the project. Oh, that's
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. I know stereotype talk about. Yeah, I know. It's just and again, I think sometimes we need to also not be too sensitive about things like that when those questions are being raised, because
Mm,
the first reaction is to want to be upset, but again, take that as a teaching moment for whoever is asking that question,
mm,
and because sometimes the reason why they ask this question, because again, the bias is there, but again, they don't know any better as well. So
yeah.
if we can sometimes humble ourselves, okay, you know what, easy, just take a chill pill and
Mm,
try and educate why that is,
Yeah.
and yeah, it
Ed-
sometimes
ed-
helps.
You can educate
mm.
without the aggression, right? Is yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the harder road to take.
It's
It
really
is, it
hard, I
is, but we
think,
got to
being
take it.
gracious.
We got to
Yeah,
take it.
absolutely,
But I think
absolutely.
it's also
The
important
amount of
to
times like who well, I've been working late in an office back when the world when we actually worked from offices. There are a number of occasions where I stayed late when I was the only person in from my workplace in the room when other people essentially come into the buildings. 3 occasions that I can think of where people assumed that I was a cleaner
Yeah,
rather than they worked there, and other people who stayed late who weren't a person of color didn't have that experience, and it
yeah.
would be very easy to take the
Anger route.
Yeah.
anger rather than that. Let's try and yeah, and try and find out what's underpinning your assumption there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
True,
it's
true.
interesting. I can certainly relate to you see on the neurodivergent aspects, but I think the reclaiming narratives for me is slightly different in that I use this month as much for education and for learning as much as I do for reclaiming my narrative. I was raised by my extremely white Irish Catholic family.
Mm,
It's the only person of color in my family, so I never
wow.
growing up, I never really related to the black community, to the community that is half of me.
Mm,
So yeah, I always felt a little bit separated from the black community, but in more recent years, yeah, it's interesting when I compare Black History Month to, for example, LGBT History Month, I feel very much more a part of that community than I have done the black community.
mm.
So as a black queer person, there's
Yeah.
yeah, there's that. As a
Again, sorry,
I can
sorry to
relate
cut in here.
to,
No,
yeah.
again, I think that also then speaks to the fact about lived experience, because you have more lived experience being in a different culture or a different setting, if that makes
Mm,
sense. And even the black community as well, it's very diverse, because you could be black, as a black African coming from different country. For example, I was born in Nigeria.
Exactly.
I've lived in Nigeria most of my life. What black means to me is different from what black means to a Nigerian by heritage but born in the UK,
Word.
right? You know what I mean? So that in itself, we as self need to also learn that history yourself, because
Mm.
if someone comes to us to say magic wand in the black community, what do you want? We don't know, because we're not in ourselves cohesive. We don't even know what we want. So again, you're right about that, Poggy, to say we also ourselves need to learn what that means.
But it's
So we
also unlearning. It's not just learning.
unlearn it.
It's
Exactly, exactly,
unlearning assumptions that have
exactly.
been made by us because
Yeah,
being a black British Nigerian, I myself have a lot of stereotypes from Nigerians that are assumed because of maybe
yeah,
my accent or because of the way I speak or, being condemned by my family in certain areas
yeah,
of knowledge that I don't have. So
yeah.
I think claiming your stories does look like knowing that everyone's lived experiences are different and you
That's
cannot make
different.
assumptions about a person based on what they look like or how they walk or what they're wearing. Like I think
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Or based on your own life experience as well. You cannot judge
Ex
me based on yours as well.
Absolutely. Your
Yeah.
lens is like we
It's
need to do a
different.
lot of undoing, a lot of unlearning
Yeah. And just
within
have
this month
empathy.
as well.
Just have
Yeah,
empathy with everyone, because like you said, because it's so different and so diverse, you just have to have that empathy lens first and then listen before speaking or before reacting. You
absolutely. I
know.
think there's a risk in there's a risk in cancel culture in that there are many people. I know that we're not cool. I know there's a fatigue in us explaining over, and there is a fatigue. I sometimes get fatigued
I
by
do.
constantly having to explain and teach as, the only advocate there is in the business. But we should also understand that people do come from some isolated communities, and then therefore they are not always educated, and therefore a certain level of grace needs to happen where you
Yeah.
assimilate and understand the situation before you speak. And
Mm.
what Poggy said really resonates. Like, have you asked first why they have these preconceived notions and
Yeah.
conceptions? Like, have you asked why? I mean, I was asked, I remember being asked because I had plaits, like I had like extensions in, and I was asked, oh, so does that mean you don't have hair? I'm just like, well, it needs to attach to something. And so having to explain the concept and the notion and why we have protective hairstyles actually needed to,
Yeah.
it wasn't them trying to be offensive. They didn't know what they were
They don't
saying.
even know.
They were
Yeah.
actually had an innate curiosity, and we
Yes.
had to get
Yes.
to that first. If I'd come with
Yes.
anger, oh no, how dare you?
Oh,
How
don't
dare
touch my
you?
hair. How do
Yeah,
you touch my hair? Yeah. Yeah.
how dare you? Then the conversation wouldn't have progressed and that person wouldn't have become learned. They needed to
Yeah.
unlearn some things and you needed to teach them in that
Yeah.
moment.
But
Um,
again, sorry to add to that as well. If you had also been very aggressive in your response as well, you're feeding into the narrative of what they think angry Black women as well. So back to your point about unlearning and relearning. Yeah, so we can go on
mm,
about this topic so much.
I don't
mm,
even know where to begin.
yeah.
I think
We've covered so much ground already there,
Yeah.
between the three of you.
Yeah.
I'll let you say what you have to say.
What does
um,
reclaiming narratives mean to you two then, Tyler and Ash?
well, what I was going to say there was it was really, really good points said by all three of you there that I strongly resonate with. Um, Even kind of doing a bit of research into this myself, there was a quote that I had seen by a rapper that was based down in London, and he said, "When the youth see me performing at Wireless Festival, hear me on the radio, and see me making money out of this, they want to be that. That inspires them." And it's funny for me because that did not inspire me growing up. I didn't see a black man go into rap and go, I need to be like that. I still wanted to be an engineer without a role model. But I thought, without being able to reclaim my narrative, even my own narrative of my own engineering journey might disappear.
Mm,
And there will then be the future that will be looking for a role model that Ash Kala could have fulfilled, but did
mm,
not because that story was never told.
Mm.
mm,
Um, And I think that's why it's very important to dig that up and uncover these stories that are out there, that have been out there, that are just never as portrayed heavily as our
absolutely.
counterparts from other ethnic backgrounds.
Mm.
Um, and what I had said previously to Tyler when preparing for this was, when we talk about Black history, we're always talking about a lot of negative connotations of Black history, but there is a
Mm.
lot of great stuff that our people has
Honestly,
done out there that we just never hear about. And I
literally.
thought, this is the time. If we
Yeah.
can reclaim narratives, this is the time to
Like
start
you said, too,
actually
untold
highlighting it.
stories. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I
definitely.
meant by untold stories in
Untold
the
stories.
beginning.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
why I
Yeah.
love David Olusoga. David Olusoga
Yeah.
goes
Yes,
around and
yes,
literally
yes.
finds the root to everything. He's just like
Yeah,
a,
he
a
does. I
genie
love him.
man. And I just really appreciate him because he just uncovered the whole lot of Black British culture and history
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way that, wasn't told before, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have enough material in our
No,
British
no
library or
evidence.
any of our
Yeah.
libraries or evidence to show that we lived and we also lived very well.
Yes.
As
Emphasis on
well.
well.
Yeah. So so yeah, I love that's why I'm a total bookie, like
Yeah.
100%. Like if you look at my library, it takes up half of this room.
Mm.
I
Love that.
love learning more about my history. Like if I could just retire and like literally just travel around the world and just connect more stories and find more women kings from the 19th century, that's what I do.
I'll be with you there. I'll be with you there. Let's
Let's
go.
go.
Yeah, that resonates so strongly. I think ultimately what we're saying is that it's all about celebrating, but it's also about that learning, and that is the important thing and the whole sentiment of Black History Month for me. Going back, I relate to Poggy what you say, kind of coming from a mixed heritage, having the white side of my family and the British side of my family, and then having heritage as well. And that combination, as Izzy said, gives me a completely different lived experience to people, to other black people in the UK, and people coming from elsewhere, people coming from the African continent, people coming from the Caribbean, people who are based in the US, people who are based elsewhere, South America, wherever they are. And a lot of people don't realize that because we have this reductive approach, because in this country we are a minority, we are all grouped together as black people. But as soon as you take the time to look beyond that and see us all as individuals with our own individual backgrounds and cultures, you start to see, oh, okay, this person has one story, and this person has another story, and this person has another story. And it's all about engaging in those conversations with people to start to kind of educate yourself and start to raise your own understanding.
And awareness.
And as much as, you know, Chi, you touched on that diversity fatigue, and sometimes it's difficult being the only person able to have that conversation with others. But even if all your conversation is, look, I cannot take responsibility for educating you, but I can signpost you this way, I can encourage you to educate yourself, then that is something you've done over kind of an emotional response where you may not, there may be no positive outcome from that situation. Turn every opportunity into a positive. If somebody's come into you and they've said something that's completely negative, I mean, Chi, I will never forget something that you said to me, and it was all about the intention.
Right. Heart posture, the intention.
If somebody comes to you stating their intention, saying, look, I'm coming from this place, I'm trying to learn this, then it gives you that comfort already, that no matter
100%.
if they're uncomfortable or don't quite know how to say what they want to say, them say it anyway, but just know I'm not trying to offend you, or I'm not trying to come from a bad place. This is just where I'm at. I don't have the understanding, but I would like.
It brings all the barriers down, and
But what I'd say is I also understand the frustration. Sorry, Poggy, on you go. What I was going to say was I also understand the frustration that was stated by Poggy and Chi, because if you are in a position that you believe you deserve, you believe you've worked hard for, and someone is just looking at you based on your appearance and saying, I don't believe that. And there's been so many times that because I'm a young black man, they don't believe that I could be working as an engineer, and they instantly assume, oh, he has a bit of money, he must be doing something that's completely different, maybe even
a footballer or a rapper.
And I'm like, no, that's I've went to school, I went to uni, and I've now came here.
Studied.
As part of my job, when I was working in automation for over 10 years, I traveled quite a lot. Particularly in the first 5 years, I was doing something like 50,000 miles a year traveling around the UK. And I was stopped by the police at least once a quarter for driving an expensive car as a 20, when I was 24 when I started at that company. So
because how can you afford to drive that car?
I have this on my road. Like I live in Chelsea, and sometimes someone will be like, "Who's the owner of the house?" when I open the door. I've had several instances where even neighbors have commented on, "You're living quite well here." They see the Porsche in the driveway and they're quite shocked, or there's a lot of assumptions about what do you do. And
what
they
do
have
you
to
really
ask
do?
you, what do you really do?
Absolutely, and that's why I think we shouldn't minimize when people do have emotional responses to things. I certainly have. It may be something very minor that sets it off, but microaggressions is death by a thousand cuts. So to the person asking the question, which may not have any malice behind it, it may be well intentioned but expressed very poorly. But to the person receiving that could be the 10th, 12th, 20th thing that they'd heard that day. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So those responses, we shouldn't say that you shouldn't have them, because we are all human at the end of the day.
No, we are. But I think, again, just to round this off, I think that also goes back to what you said, Chi, about untold could potentially change the narrative or the stereotype or the perception of what we should be looking like or where we should be living or what we should be doing, that could sometimes start to move that needle. But the reason they're asking this question, because they think, by looking a certain way or looking have a certain color, you should be doing a certain type of job or live in a certain area, But if they remember, like you said, we come from kings and queens, right? We've lived well, just that, history has sort of distorted, the narrative. But if we, if we again reclaim that and say, hey, this is who we really are. This is, some of our treasures are in some places that shouldn't be, and all of that stuff, then that might start to maybe, I don't know,
I
really
think it would
change
help if everyone wanted to investigate their history, as well, not just us. I mean, a lot
everyone.
of the time it's us telling the stories, but it'd be good if
Yeah.
they'd also like investigated their stories and understood that 30% of people within the UK actually have some lineage or association with someone that's either Afro-Caribbean or West African. So,
Yeah.
there are a lot
They'll be
of,
surprised.
white Caucasian people walking around with a great, 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 great granddad that is probably black and maybe was a steward in a home or, lived in the Georgian times very well in the country somewhere. And perhaps a master saw that they did incredibly well and gave them 2 mansions. Like there are literally many stories, and many, yeah, many instances of or many statistics that show us we're the fastest growing nation with biracial kids. Like there are lots of indications that, like, we haven't just lived like this now, we've lived like this before.
Yeah.
So where race is clearly, or xenophobia, I like to call it xenophobia, actually, it's fear of something foreign. It's fear of something that's unusual, and this keeps happening throughout time. We see this repetitively. Something foreign comes in and, oh, this is a bit strange, this is unusual, and therefore it's bad. And therefore they find some, scapegoat, and they find some scapegoat for their problems. But, actually, why are we scared of something foreign? Like, why are we something brilliant can come out of different communities, out of different types of minds, out of different ways of thinking. I mean, I've been on a design call before, and this is where I knew that, wow, I really needed to change and do some unlearning. I was managing a platform scenario, the human factors, like ergonomic side of things, and I was managing like the sizes of the accommodation modules on a platform. And I just went for standard sizes, like, because I've done a lot of Dutch waters. And suddenly I was in Asian waters. And obviously, for statistics are, so people that are in Hong Kong or people, they would have a smaller stature. So the type of rooms I was designing for the accommodation module, I didn't really take that into account, and I didn't really care. I was just like, yeah, okay, this is what I'm going to present. And on the call, it took someone of Asian descent to literally be like, have you considered this? And the Dutch person as well was like, yeah, gee, like you've
No,
applied the
that's
same measures across, but not actually taken. And I was slightly embarrassed, but it was also a learning moment for me
yeah,
because I'd made assumptions just in this design. I'd made assumptions that one would fit for all,
the other,
and I wasn't like bothered to change it. I just wanted to get on with it.
Ironically, as well, the Dutch are the tallest race in the world. So
Literally. So imagine applying that to a Dutch. Literally, I would just apply literally an Asian and just say that's going to work for the Dutch platform, and that's also going to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed right now.
Yeah, but again,
I'm
Chi,
so
that speaks to
embarrassed.
the fact that we all have unconscious bias, though. It's
Absolutely.
all of us, right? And back to the point about us having that empathy, that patience for everyone else, because the same way we're pointing at the finger at someone else, we also can be pointed back to us in that
Absolutely.
about,
Absolutely. Lots of things to unlearn.
Yeah.
Good question to start, guys.
Really good
I
one.
also see in the chat.
We've just spent 35 minutes on one question.
Full stop.
But that's just goes to show how much there is to discuss and how much there is to say on the topic. And I know each of you could say
we could be
more and more and more and more.
We could be here forever. Like I've spoken to
Absolutely.
Poggy before, and I could actually be here forever. Like
I've seen it. I've seen it. They were there all night.
you've seen it. We were there all night. We were the last people there at the station, right?
Oh, but
what is interesting about the reclaiming narratives things, but with Black History Month, as with any month of a certain type, you'll get on Netflix or Sky or Amazon, whatever you sign up to, you'll have suggested movies for whatever the brand is that particular month. And it is, I have pointed people to certain movies, something she and I have discussed before, Hidden Figures, as an example of a brilliant film about unspoken, stories with three women of color in STEM, one engineer, two mathematicians, and one programmer, possibly. But it's a brilliant film, and it's good that films like that, movies like that, are
Yeah.
made, and that they are brought more into prominence in months like this. But from the reclaiming narrative side of things, what I would say is it is important for those stories to be told by the community, and a problem
Yeah.
that films like that have, and not trying to focus on the negative, but you do very commonly get the white savior thing with movies. Even Hidden Figures has
Oh,
that,
yeah.
which is unfortunate, because without that it would be a perfect film in my book.
But at the same time,
films like Blindside, it's always, the white person comes in to save the day, which it's useful for telling the history. It's useful for telling stories of people who the general population may not be massively aware of, but it would be better for all those stories to be told by the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I'm very keen on expanding Black cinema, expanding, literally I would love, and I'm very involved in a lot of like writers or African writers, like I speak to Chibundu, Wole Soyinka, and a lot of people to make sure that we're capturing our history in the best way possible. Interacting or getting engaged with, media is the best platform right
Yeah,
now
it is.
because
Yeah.
everyone watches absolutely everything.
And
Everyone
anything.
absorbs everything like a sponge on Netflix. And it enables you, therefore, to start telling more stories. And I think Chimamanda did this TED talk, and she was just like, everything starts with a story. And
Yeah.
it's one of the best TED talks ever because it's so true. Like everyone in there can write a book. Everybody has like some
Lexicon.
experience that could resonate with one other person, even if it's just one other person that it sells to, and it makes such an impactful contribution, it's still worth it. Like
Yeah.
it's still worth it. Your story is still worth being told. And that's why like I love stories being captured from just like, and people also, I feel like people in the office relate very well. Especially for those that don't, there are going to be people that aren't always so interested in D&I, and they're not really interested in Black History Month.
What's it got to do with me?
Yeah, what's it got to do with me? And this is this is how
What
you
about
can
my white
change that.
history?
Yeah, and this is about how you can change it. You can tailor that discussion to talk about incredible achievements within your field and industry, um, s- by Black people. So I always like, I'm just like, oh, have you heard about civil engineer that constructed this bridge in the 1890s? And that was the premise for all of our standards and codes and practices. And then that engages my principal engineer, and he'll be like, oh, really? What was their name? I must research this person. And I give them a name. And then they start researching, be like, oh, yes, this code came from this person. Do you? And they get excited, and I talk more about their contributions. And that's how you can get someone who's completely uninterested to be like suddenly very interested. It's the way your dialogue and your conversation is tailored to what you're doing. They need to relate to you. Like literally, it's all about relating to people. I think that's
Yeah.
what people managers do. That's what
Yeah.
VPs do. That's what HR does. It's very tactful. You need to be able to find one thing in common with that person. And I mean, you're in the same industry, right? Discussing about an invention or discussing about something that's supporting what you're doing enables them to get excited about it too. And that's how you shift, in my
Find
opinion, the
find that
D&I
shared
perspective.
background.
Yeah.
Find that shared background. Very well
Mm,
said. I do want to move the conversation on in a moment because we have so much to talk about. We have a few questions coming in already. I do want to get to
mm,
those. But so many, so many brilliant things said. I think, yeah, understanding how you can be. It's all about the inclusion in DEI, right? So if you're creating any sense of othering and us and them, it doesn't engage people. If
yeah.
it's all about me and my group of people, then people don't
Mm,
necessarily engage with that. And it's remembering actually, if you can find that shared history with someone and that shared sense of identity, whatever it is, might just be being an engineer. And people love to learn. People love to learn. So if you can tell someone something they don't know, they're going to remember, that's an interesting conversation. That's someone who has a lot that I don't know. Maybe I should speak to this person more. And yeah, so much, so much. So thank you. I do want to talk a bit about your areas of DEI work. You both, like we've said, have many, many, many hats. You do lots of different things, but I'm curious to know how in everything that you do, how you approach, as we've just kind of gotten onto those obstacles. So people that aren't necessarily engaging with, it may be events, it may be you're trying to organize something, it may be you're trying to share particular information, or you just want to generally get people to have conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion. How do you approach that as an individual when somebody's not necessarily coming from the place you expect them to, or yeah, they may have some opinions or views that you don't necessarily agree with. I'm going to open it up. Izzy,
Yeah.
if you'd like to go
So
first.
for me, I first understand, who they are and what they're about. Because again, there might be reasons why, they're opposing that, like we have sort of alluded to. Change is what people are not really comfortable with, right? And people kind of fear what they're not familiar, what they're not aware of, right? I remember, over time being in this D&I space, racial diversity is, I always call it the hot potato, because no one really knows or knows the right thing to say that might upset people, or people just feel like, oh, here we go again, going about on beating on about the race thing. So I try to understand, who are you, what you're on about, and try to make sure I find connection with what I'm trying to do with what you're all about, right? So take, for example, if I say I want to kind of like run another, Black History Month event, and I'm getting some resistance from the managers to say, why do we have to do this all over again? It's kind of sharing with them the benefit of us doing it to them. What's the benefit to you as an individual first, as opposed to saying, here we go again with another BHM month, right? Once you can have that connection, find that connection within the person and yourself, and understand the why, sell the why you're doing it to them, I think, that always helps. For me, is that connection, finding that connection, like Chi just said, again, it might be saying, engineering is the connection. It might be, why are we doing this? Just kind of being very open and very, honest about why we need to do that. That always sort of helps me get through to people.
I think
Thank you.
bringing in advocates is amazing. So we often within the company, if I've found I'm fatigued and I've spoken quite a bit, I have mentors and people that I can speak to within the Black engineering STEM community, from System to Dr. Nike to Tolly and quite a few other people. And so that means I can actually lean on others within the community to support me, to help my colleagues, and get them to come in and say, for lunch and learn session for half an hour, are you able to speak? And often with, not-for-profit organizations, and they're very willing to help and build communities, and therefore they're very willing to take half an hour and volunteer out of their lunch just to speak. And that in itself, just indicating to your colleague and being like, oh, do you want to have lunch together? Well, I'm having lunch watching this. And there's a way in which you can do things together and show them that this is an opportunity to see how I live. This is an opportunity to understand my own lens and prefer, and this is how you can support me. Because there are colleagues or advocates who might be like, actually, how can I support you? And you can support me by understanding this. And the best way you can understand this is by doing this, actually giving them a gateway and opening the door for them. I also believe that, spotlighting these success stories is very important, being like showing the benefits, as he highlighted, being able to say, because we did this, it increased our revenue. Because I'm a
Right,
business,
yeah.
from a project perspective, I always look at margin. So I have a lot of, experience with the operations leads. And yeah, we have a lot of I have a lot of high value when it comes to some of the projects I'm leading, some resourcing wise. So that means I think about the potential and purpose of people and the opportunities they should be given. And therefore, I emphasize how giving this person the spotlight enabled them to be successful and transfer knowledge to the next
Yeah.
graduate on the next project in the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to showcase the positive
Benefit.
results, like showing them the benefits of doing this, is what they need to see from a business perspective. Why do I need to learn about this? Well, it means we increase our innovation-led projects. It means that we increase the revenue that comes in because we have diverse teams. It means that we show them the actual benefits, because I think a lot of people are very work-minded,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't like to fit in the two streams, D&I work. What does that mean? So show them the relevance, and like show them the opportunities that come with that, show them how they, first of all, so yeah, as we said before, like understand how they're feeling about it, and try and gauge why are you feeling a bit
Mm-hmm.
shaky about not being involved. um and then think about, okay, what are the constructive ways here I can show them, what if they're close to you as well, because I'm close to a few of my colleagues, I'll tell them how this has benefited me as an individual. And hopefully that should mean something to them. Showing them the relevance of it should mean something to them.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's free as well, offering D&I training for half an hour is nothing when it comes to time. It really is nothing with a 40-hour week. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's the way I would, yeah, encourage
We
other
need to
people.
make time. We need to make time. That's what it's about. And that's why things like you say, like these lunch and learn sessions are a great mechanism to do something like that. I mean, you mentioned Nikkei, AFB have been running lunch and learn sessions each Wednesday this month. Incredible. Free to attend,
Amazing.
open to anyone. So
Fantastic.
in our office, we've hosted that. Then we've had a group of people. We've put it out to everyone in the office. We'll be doing this each
Amazing.
Wednesday if you'd like to join us. And after every session, I've had at least one person come up to me who isn't a person of color and say, "That was really interesting. Thank you for doing that. This is what I
Mm,
learned. This is what I took from that session." And I got that sentiment that they had it ignited something in them that, like, right,
Yeah.
I have a different understanding now, and I want to support you. I want to support your community. I want to stand by you. And I also see the benefit of it, like you say. I mean, to put it very frankly, money talks. So
Yeah.
going to senior leadership, like
All about numbers.
this is not just about the people story and the people side, which a lot of people relate to, but there is genuine benefit here to organizations and they need to see
Yeah.
that. I do want to come on to some questions we've had in the chat. We have
mm,
just over 10 minutes left.
Long question.
So I'll ask each of you a couple of these questions if that's okay. We'll try and get through
Yeah.
as much as we can. Um, and then we will wrap things up. So we have a question from Zim saying, do you think that racial stigmas are different depending on the part of the UK that you live in? And I want
yes.
to go to Izzy first because I know you since you've been around, you've been in a few different places, and you've been down in London, you've been up north, and you've seen that difference. Um, yeah, can you share a bit on that for us?
I think it's different, and I think it's different because of the the makeup of the city, the demographic of the city, and the exposure of the people living in that area. I take for example, I can walk in some shops in Sheffield and I can find some egusi soup and ayamashi in Sainsbury's, right? I can walk some parts in Lincoln, I wouldn't find that. So yes, it's different, and that shapes the perception, the perspective, and the experiences of those living in those areas. So yes, it's different. Does that mean you only can live in some certain areas? I say no. Back to the point about you being an advocate wherever you are, you need to make sure wherever you are, you make your presence known, you make sure you make your contribution known. So yes, back to the question, it is different across different cities. But I always tell people, if you're going to choose where to live, you have to be very strategic in terms of where you're choosing, in terms of jobs, in terms of your lived experience, all of those factors. I living alone, so yes, it is very varied and very different.
Thank
Can you
you.
repeat the question, Tyler? Sorry. Can you
It
repeat it?
was, do you think that racial stigmas are different depending on which part of the UK that you live in?
I do, because
Mm.
I think you have to look at the root of tribalism and even clans as it stands. When you think about even Scotland as well, like there's several different clans that have animosity towards each other. And so therefore it's not only, I think a lot of people think it's just dependent on race as it stands, but it's also, yeah, also tribes, also different communities, different clans, different which means that people do have different tendencies, different preconceptions as well, different notions, different ways of living. I've lived in Derby, I've lived in Rotterdam, I've lived in Australia. I've seen like literally all sorts of different preconceptions. The way I speak, the way what I should I be wearing sun cream? And really, I guess it's just education because a lot of the time it's less exposure. Some people are very isolated in those
Yeah.
communities. And therefore, what you think might be offensive is not actually them trying to be offensive. It
Yeah.
could just be like I remember picking up sun cream and it being put in my I was in Sainsbury's in Derby and literally the person who was checking my food out said, "Oh, you're not going to need that." And that's and rather than get angry, I was just
Wow.
like, well, I do to avoid skin cancer. And she was like, "Oh, really? I had no idea." And I was just like, well, yeah, that's actually a lack of education,
Yeah.
as opposed to her trying to be. And she thought it was a joke, like it was funny. And I had to educate and say, listen, look, anyone can get skin cancer.
That's so
But
important.
My
Chinwe,
melanocytes don't help me.
yeah, but again, Chinwe, even people in the Black communities, well, not everyone is aware of that as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. Yeah,
You know what
it's
I
I
true.
mean?
was
It's
not
true.
So,
aware of it.
Ignorance.
And
yeah.
then
Yeah.
I
beyond
can admit I was
that,
not aware of it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, we
I've
go.
heard this before. I've heard this before, and it was a situation with adoptive parents, white parents of a black child, and being in that situation, not having the education to know, oh, my child looks different than me, my child is different than me.
Yeah.
I need to do something extra for them.
Mm,
So, in that situation where you've had the grace to educate that person in that moment rather than kind
Lash
of,
out. What do you mean?
yes,
yeah. No.
yes, then
Yeah.
they've learned something which they may take with them, and that may benefit another person. Like you said in the conversation earlier, it's about using education to benefit others,
Yeah.
Mm,
and all that feeds into this supporting the next generation and
yeah.
understanding that, we are doing things which the work we are doing now, we may not see the rewards in our lifetime, but just
Mm,
know they will come.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Rosa
so
Parks didn't see
important.
the
I
reward in
could
her
say something
lifetime.
on that I would agree with both of you there that where you live does change the racial stigmas. I grew up in Manchester, in the big city. I now live in Shropshire, which is extremely rural, and the difference between
Mm,
the urban and rural living, just going. I've been here for 5 years now, and going to the supermarket, for example, I see far
yeah.
people who look like me. And
Yeah.
bit about this and seen living in Chelsea and some things that you kind of had there. I
Mm,
lived in and travelled a lot for work. Uh, Usually in Europe, but also up to I've spent a lot of my career up in Scotland, where actually I had far less racial discrimination in Scotland than I did in
mm,
England. Far, far less.
yeah. Yeah.
I've also lived in South America. I lived in Cambodia for a while, where even
Mm,
buying shower gel was difficult because
wow.
bleaching agents are in so many products there
Wow.
because it's such a common thing.
Mm,
It really does make a difference.
goodness.
Thanks, Polly.
Mm.
We've got another question in the chat here, which I do just want to touch on quickly, because I think it's such an interesting topic, and it's from Daniel. And I know, Daniel, you've come back and said, it may not necessarily have been related to what our speaker said earlier, but it's talking about your German and English heritage
Mm,
and about removing reference to people who manifested huge injustices to people of color in the slave trade and relating that to concentration camps and obviously the Nazi regime. And I just want to acknowledge that for a moment. And I suppose I would hope we agree with you there on the importance of addressing the negatives throughout history. We are not looking to kind of ignore that and turn away from, the kind of brutality that happened. And yeah, sort of Izzy, Chief, either of you have anything to say on that, I welcome it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
I
Oh,
think
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I understand that people do have a lot of anger, right? That anger is okay, but I think anger needs to be materialized into knowing what can actually change. Like, I think a lot of people are very dependent on, we need reparations, we need this, we need this. But in order to actually change our teams, we need the mind to change, not just not just financial incentives or this or be like we actually need the mind of our society to change because we don't know what's being fed from previous generations to people that are in all Caucasian backgrounds. And so my thing is, if you are a steward to your community and you know that you can see um, that racial microaggressions exist, you do not gaslight it. Do not say that it doesn't. Ensure that you're telling the next generation and your colleagues as well, like, oh no, I see where they're coming from. I see this lens. I can understand this. If you gaslight someone who has a story that needs to be told, whether it's of, a different race or of a different gender or sexuality, you immediately prove that these stereotypes and these preconceptions still exist. I know it's difficult because there are a lot of people that still speak from a place of anger. There are a lot of people who are like, give this back to my ancestors, or and yet fine, anger can be justified in multiple ways. But also I think that sometimes you can treat that with a lens and ask, okay, what can I now presently do
Do.
to make this a safe space for you in the work environment? Don't completely dismiss, the history that they're sharing with you. Just say, I want to action something now and help you. I want to be an advocate for you. Advocacy is a continual and changing process. It's not, a lot of people are very good to put up their hands and be like, I'm an advocate, but it's actually it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of like strong discipleship. Like literally you have to like continually keep changing, continue to keep reading resources, continue to keep understanding what these new terms are. And that means, okay, divorce yourself from the idea that what they're saying is wrong. It's not wrong. It's their truth. It's their truth. It's their history. But ask them now, what can I do to support you? And that's a conversation that can actually evolve. That's
Yeah.
a conversation that can move from A to B, as
Yes.
opposed to us sticking in A.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, Poggy, I can see you've got your hand up. To all our guests, please bear with us. I know we're coming close to the end now, but
Sorry, folks.
no, we could go and go and go and go. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, can you say what you have to say?
Me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just reading that question from Daniel. He talks about removing people like Colston and Bristol, and presumably talking about the statues here. Statues I think are mentioned in the question. What I would say, when I worked in automation, I worked for three global German automation companies. So I spent a lot of time in Germany with work. How I can sort of relate this back to what you're talking about there is you will very, very rarely find a bust or a statue of Hitler or from anyone from the Nazi regime in Germany. But
Mhm.
education of World War II, of the Holocaust, of everything happened is compulsory in Germany. By
Mm.
removing statues of people like Colston, you're not removing the reference, or you shouldn't be removing the reference from them. You shouldn't be removing education of what they did. You're removing the celebration of that person
Yeah.
and taking that
Yeah.
reference to a different place, instead of having them in on a statue where you're basically celebrating a person. Let's take them into a museum. Let's teach people about who he was, what he did, right and wrong, and not just Colson, other people from history as well. I wouldn't say that we should be removing all references to the people. I just think those references should be in a more appropriate place, in the same way that statues of people like Hitler and Stalin are not very commonly found in public anymore.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but some people can treat them as shrines, which is the
Yeah.
issue. And then we manifest dark and quite evil cultures and cults that, don't want our society to change. And they go to those places and treat those as their like holy grounds. Quite literally, they're, this is how you get neo-Nazism and, creating shrines for those places and keeping those statues up. And it genuinely enforces hate in multiple areas, as opposed to in enforcing love and in enforcing, stronger communities and culture and building one another.
That's it. That's it. I will come on to you in a moment, Izzy, in case you've got anything to add to that. But in the spirit of Poggy's point there, I do want to just take a moment for education.
Mm.
And this is combining two in one. This is education and celebration for us. So we have here just a few notable figures from engineering backgrounds who we just want to spotlight for a moment, for everyone joining us today. Ash, do you want to say anything on these individuals?
So, I mean, where can we even start here? There's a lot of history behind these engineers, and I think the biggest thing for it, and for myself as well, was I had spoken to our guest speakers and Tyler previously before the event about the likes of these figures and how there is even more figures out there that I was not aware of, that I had to do further research into. We can see the main key things that these individuals are doing, but I implore everyone to try and find more individuals that are even closely related to their dreams, their aspirations, and their career paths that they'd like to follow, because I guarantee you there will be an engineer who is like-minded or even looks similar to you out there who's probably done what you've done. I highly doubt that we'll be the first people doing what we've done. It's just that it's trying to find the documentation of that, and that's what this month's theme is all about. Um, I mean, even looking at the first engineer, Elijah McCoy on that list, he was a runaway slave who actually went to Scotland and got his degree of mechanical engineering in Scotland, similar to me, if you can't tell by now. So it's just something that I thought, right, how many other engineers are out there that have done what I want to do?
Yeah.
Um, and that's the big thing that I'd like everyone to take away from this webinar.
That's it. That's it. So if you are, from a black background, there's some inspiration there for you to take from, and stories to look into. Like, Kash said, if you know of these individuals or not, and then there are so many more people out there. You mentioned earlier on a wider perspective outside of engineering. David Olusoga, he has, which however you are, if you're a book person, you can read Black and British. If
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
more of a visual learner, if you want to just sit down casually in an evening and enjoy something, there's a documentary on that one. You
there is,
can,
yeah. Mm.
however you want to learn, there is something out there for you. There are podcasts these days. You can go and listen to music. If you really listen to the words in some songs, you're hearing people's story and their histories. So there is opportunity everywhere. It's just taking that time to push yourself beyond your immediate surroundings
Yeah.
and think, I'm going to read this, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to search out these things that I don't know. And if you don't know how to do that, ask someone else. And it doesn't even have to be a person of color. Say, hey, what do you do to learn more about this? What do you do to educate yourself? Have those conversations, start to have those conversations, and you'll begin to see that there is so much more out there. You may look at individuals who are from, they may be from a white background or just a non-black background and speak to them, but understand that beyond them, there is a network of people. You don't know their story and their history.
Mhm.
And they may be able to advocate for people and to educate in a way that you weren't necessarily expecting them to. So yes, Ash, thank you for that. If you don't know these stories, please do go and look into them. I'm going to come on now to, there's just a slide there on how to engage with us, a few different things. So we have a newsletter and blog. You can sign up to Reach Network at equalengineers.com. Apologies, the conference has already been and gone. We've been running monthly meetings. If that's something you're interested in, please do let us know. We're on LinkedIn. And we will have more events to come. We're in October now, so I'm not sure how much more we have planned before the year end. But please do stay in touch. There will be more to come. Watch this space. And we also have our other networks. I don't have anything prepared for that, but if you go to Equal Engineers on our website, you will see our networks. We have obviously the two of us here today. You have Reach Network, you have InterEngineering. We also have our neurodiversity network. We have our disability network. We have a men's and women's network that are launching. So there is so much there. Please do go and check that out. There is something for everyone. A lot of great people working behind the scenes, volunteering their time to put on events and to organize and to try and educate people and offer this opportunity to connect. So yeah, do go and check that out. I want to come to everyone now for kind of final remarks. I can see the participants, the guests are still sitting in there, so thank you for sticking with us. I know we're over time. But first, I want to come to Izzy. If there was one thing that you wanted people to take away from this session, what would it be?
I think for me, it's just having that empathy and that patience to educate people a bit more. Well, you said one thing, I'm just going to add the other thing. I think Chinwe might, sorry to steal your thunder, Chinwe. I think, tell more untold stories, in those moments of educating, use that chance to tell those stories, but also, just be that advocate and just, spread the gospel.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, come to Chi next.
I'd say my philosophy in life is always to serve society and serve the communities that I'm in. And not just, your people that you typically would call your friends or that, maybe look like you, like serve and everyone so that we create a safe and sustainable place for the next generation. And that means learning, unlearning, telling stories, reclaiming narratives, and creating, just environments where people can have hearty, honest conversations, but also feel protected. Um, and if in 20 years when you have your next kid, you want them to be able to walk the grounds and say, I'm perfectly safe, I'm perfectly happy. I'm, in the community filled with vibrant people from multiple cultures. And in order to do that, we need to do the dirty work and actually serve
Yeah.
society now. Sustainability is not just about typically, climate action. It's about empowering people in a way that responds to the future in a way that's positive and safe for other people. And that starts here. That starts with you telling your stories, being an advocate, being an example, and lifting and doing the dirty work. Serve society now.
Two brilliant. Well, three maybe if we're counting your extra one, Izzy. But thank you. Poggy, I want to come to you before we close.
Something I'd like people to take away would be a desire to learn, I suppose, whether you're part of the community or not.
Thank you. Ash, anything else from yourself?
Just adding on what Poggy had said there, yes. I think to me anyway, Chi is very, very inspirational in how much she's willing to learn about her past. It's something that I also have decided to take on myself is trying to learn. Poggy and Chi were the two people that actually recommended that I watched Hidden Figures as well. So it's things like that that I naturally find myself being a trailblazer. I feel some emotional way about something and I decide, right, we need to do something today, and then I just start it. But I think that is very vital that I myself take a step back, learn more. There's lots more out there. And I would happily recommend that to the rest of you as well who are watching this, as there is much more content, there is much more education that is needed throughout our community. Whether you are Scottish, whether you are English, we're all still coming under the same umbrella. And even on that point as well, we want to highlight the cross-network collaboration between REACH and InterEngineering, that if you are wanting to take more interested in these networks, you aren't restricted to just one. It's free to join as many as you want. It's free to participate in as many as you want. And if you feel like, although you may be a Black queer person, or you may be now a diversion in Black, there is multiple networks that you can tap into and learn more about your history and learn more about role models within the same backgrounds.
Amazing. Thank you, Ash. Thank you. Yeah, it's intersectionality is something I'm hearing more and more and more these days. And it's about seeing people as an individual rather than a member of a minority group. So yeah, please do get in touch, engage, however works for you, email, LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you all. Thank you to all our guests for joining us today. Thank you for our wonderful guests who have come on and spoken to us and shared their stories, reclaiming narratives, shared your perspectives. And yeah, thank you to Poggy and InterEngineering for letting Reach Network come in and to work on this collaborative event again, showing the intersectionality. It's great. It's great. And I do just want to take a moment to share how positive I found this to be. And when in the face of such a kind of overwhelming challenge, when we're talking about kind of prejudice and exclusion and things like that, and trying to tackle this in the workplace and beyond, I think it's this positivity and this optimism that we need to channel, as well as the practicality of how to make it work. So thank you all for sharing today. Thank you for being part of this. And yeah, we'll wrap things up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, folks. Bye. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That was incredible, incredible, honestly.